First contact gone wrong. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Pathfinder, watching as the strange crystalline structure grew larger on the view screen. After 3 years in deep space, the crew had discovered something truly remarkable, an artificial construct of impossible geometry orbiting an otherwise unremarkable star. "Analysis, Dr. Kepper?" she asked, her voice steady despite the excitement coursing through her. The science officer looked up from his station. "It's definitely artificial, Captain. Materials unknown, energy signature unlike anything in our database. And it's responding to our presence." "Responding how?" Before Capper could answer, Lieutenant Commander Park at Communications straightened. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. Unknown frequency, but our systems are adapting." "On screen," Rise ordered. The view screen flickered, and where the crystalline structure had been, a figure appeared. Humanoid, but clearly alien. Tall and slender with skin that seemed to shimmer with an internal luminescence. Its eyes, all 4 of them, blinked in an unsettling pattern. "We are the Axoni," the alien said, its voice translated through the ship's computers. "You have entered prohibited space. Identify yourselves." Ray stepped forward. "I am Captain Alina Reyes of the Earth vessel Pathfinder. We are explorers from the planet Earth, seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Unregistered species. Unaligned world. Scanning." Commander Mikhail Volkov, Reyes' first officer, whispered, "Captain, they're probing our systems." "Block them," she ordered quietly before addressing the alien again. "We come in peace. We had no knowledge this was prohibited space. We're happy to withdraw if—" "Scan complete," the alien interrupted. "Primitive technological level. Concerning biological adaptability. High aggression markers." The Axoni tilted its head. "Your species presents an unacceptable risk factor for expansion." "Risk factor?" Rise frowned. "I assure you, we have no hostile intent. Your intent is irrelevant. Your potential is the concern." The alien made a gesture with its long fingers. "This encounter has been logged. Evaluation complete. Containment protocol initiated." The transmission cut abruptly. The crystalline structure began to pulse with energy. "Captain," the tactical officer shouted. "Energy buildup detected. They're charging weapons." Rice didn't hesitate. "Red alert. Shields up. Helm, get us out of here. Maximum speed." The Pathfinder lurched as it turned away from the structure, engines straining. On the view screen, a section of the crystalline construct detached, transforming into what could only be described as a warship, sleek, angular, and radiating power. "They're pursuing," Volkov reported, "gaining rapidly." "Evasive maneuvers," Reyes ordered. "Dr. Kapper, I need options." The science officer worked frantically at his station. "The asteroid field in the neighboring system might mask our signature, but our engines can't outrun them." "We only need to reach the jump point," Reyes said. "Lieutenant Park, send a warning burst transmission to Earth. First contact hostile, potential threat to humanity. Include all scan data." "Transmission away," Park confirmed. The ship shuddered as energy fire from the alien vessel grazed their shields. "Shields at 68%, tactical reported. Direct hit would have vaporized us, Captain." "Divert power from non-essential systems to shields and engines," Rise ordered. "Engineer Chen, I need more speed." "I'm giving you everything she's got, Captain." Chen's voice came over the comm. "Any more, and we risk a core breach." The Pathfinder rocked again as another shot came closer. "Shields at 42%, tactical updated. 2 more hits like that, and we're done." Approaching asteroid field, the helm officer announced. "Take us in," Rise ordered. "Random course changes, full sensor jamming." The Pathfinder plunged into the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks. The alien vessel followed, its precision fire now hampered by the natural obstacles. "They're still gaining," Volkov warned. Jump point calculations complete, the navigator announced. But we need 15 seconds clear of the asteroids to initiate. Ray studied the tactical display, mind racing. Engineering, prepare to vent plasma from the starboard nacelles on my mark. Helm, on that same mark, cut engines and rotate ship 180 degrees. Captain, that's... Volka began. The only chance we've got, she finished. Everyone brace for high G maneuvers. 3, 2, 1 mark. The Pathfinder vented superheated plasma as it spun in space, creating a blinding cloud. The alien vessel fired into the cloud, missing the ship entirely as it completed its rotation, and re-engaged engines at full power, now heading directly away from its pursuer through a newly opened path in the asteroids. Jump point in 5 seconds, the navigator called out. They're firing again. Jump now, Rise commanded. The universe seemed to fold around them as the Pathfinder's jump drive engaged. The bridge crew held their breath until the stars reappeared in new configurations. Jump successful, the navigator reported, relief evident in his voice. We're outside their sensor range. Rise allowed herself a single deep breath before turning to Volkov. Damage report. Shields at 18%. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, but emergency force fields are holding. 2 casualties, 7 injured. She nodded grimly. Set course for Earth, maximum safe speed. We need to warn the Alliance. As the Pathfinder limped homeward, Rise retreated to her ready room and recorded her official log entry. Captain's log, stardate 218547. First contact with the species identifying themselves as the Axoni has ended in hostility. Their technology far surpasses our own, and they have designated humanity as a threat to be contained. A euphemism, I fear, means our extinction. The Pathfinder barely escaped. We are returning to Earth at our best speed to warn the Alliance of this new threat. I fear that humanity now faces an enemy unlike any we have encountered before, one that made its judgment before we could even properly introduce ourselves. God help us all. 2 weeks later, in the Alliance Security Council chamber beneath Geneva, Captain Rice finished presenting her report to a stunned audience of military leaders and government officials. Admiral Zhao, head of Earth Defense Command, broke the silence. Let me be clear, Captain. These aliens, these Axoni, determined our entire species to be a threat simply because of our, what did they call it? Biological adaptability and aggression markers. Admiral, Rise replied. From what little we could gather, the Axoni appear to value stability and predictability above all else. Humanity's rapid technological advancement and our history of conflict likely triggered some form of threat assessment protocol. And now they're coming to contain us, General Santos said, her expression grim. With technology that makes our most advanced ships look like children's toys. We don't know that they're coming immediately, a diplomat offered. Perhaps there's still time for a peaceful resolution. Dr. Kepper, who had accompanied Rise to the meeting, shook his head. The transmission we intercepted after our escape suggests otherwise. The Axoni have dispatched what they term a containment fleet. Based on the energy signatures, we estimate at least 12 vessels, each more powerful than the one that attacked the Pathfinder. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. Admiral Zhao finally spoke. How long do we have? At their observed speed, 3 months, Rise answered. Perhaps 4. Then we have no choice, Zhao said, standing. As of this moment, the Alliance is at war. We need to mobilize every ship, every resource, every brilliant mind we have. He looked directly at Rise. Captain, you've seen these aliens in action. I'm promoting you to Commodore, effective immediately. Your mission is to form a special task force to develop strategies against this threat. Rise straightened. With respect, Admiral, conventional tactics won't work against the Axoni. Their technology is superior, yes, Zhao nodded. But humanity has faced long odds before. What we lack in technology, we'll make up for with human ingenuity. He addressed the entire council. Throughout our history, humanity has been at its best when our backs are against the wall. The Axoni may think they know what humans are capable of, but they're about to learn that we don't go quietly into the night. As the council broke into urgent discussion, Reyes met Dr. Capper's worried gaze. "What do you think, Doctor?" she asked quietly. "Do we have a chance?" Capper considered for a moment before answering. The Axoni predicted our responses with remarkable accuracy during the encounter. They expect us to react in certain ways, likely based on whatever data they collected about us. Our only advantage may be to do what they least expect. Reyes nodded slowly, an idea beginning to form. Then that's exactly what we'll do. They think they know humanity, but they've never met us before. Her eyes hardened with determination. It's time to show them just how unpredictable humans can be. The adaptive defense. The observation deck of Lunar Defense Station Alpha offered a perfect view of Earth, the blue jewel suspended against the blackness of space. Commodore Reyes found the sight both calming and motivating as she prepared for the most important briefing of her career. "They're ready for you," Commander Volkov said from behind her. Reyes nodded, taking one last look at her homeworld before following Volkov to the command center. The room fell silent as she entered, all eyes turning to her. 3 months of frantic preparation had transformed humanity's defense forces, but would it be enough? The Axoni containment fleet has been detected crossing the Kuiper Belt. She began without preamble. 12 warships, as predicted. Arrival at Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours. Holographic displays activated, showing the approaching alien vessels. "Our conventional forces are in position," Admiral Zhao reported. "Every ship we have, positioned according to your unconventional strategy, Commodore." "What's the status of Project Chameleon?" Reyes asked. Dr. Capper stepped forward. "The modifications have been completed on all designated vessels. We've successfully replicated the radiation signature of civilian vessels and natural phenomena, as you specified." "And the butterfly squadrons?" General Santos nodded. "All pilots trained in the new protocols. They think we're crazy, but they're ready." "Good." Reyes activated a detailed tactical display. "Let's review one last time. The Axoni expect us to defend Earth directly. A logical, predictable response. Instead, our main fleet remains hidden, powered down on the far side of the Moon and Mars, disguised as mining operations. Our visible defenses are minimal, appearing disorganized and primitive." "Baiting the trap," Volkov added. "Exactly. The Axoni will approach with overwhelming force, expecting an easy victory." Reyes highlighted various points in Earth orbit. "When they commit to their attack run, our hidden ships will execute the butterfly protocol. Random, unpredictable attack patterns designed to confuse their targeting systems. Meanwhile," Dr. Capper continued, "we'll activate the E-impulse network we've positioned throughout the orbital paths. Not powerful enough to disable their ships completely, but sufficient to disrupt their precision systems temporarily." "That's our window," Reyes emphasized. 30 seconds, maybe less, before they adapt. During that time, our Hummingbird drones will deliver their payloads directly to the weak points we identified in their shield geometry." Admiral Zhao frowned. "It's still a desperate gamble, Commodore. If their shields aren't configured exactly as we anticipate, then we adapt," Reyes cut in firmly. "That's humanity's greatest strength, Admiral. Our ability to change tactics on the fly, to think creatively under pressure. The Axoni are technologically superior but rigid in their thinking. They categorized us as aggressive and adaptable. So let's show them just how right they were." The meeting continued with final assignments and contingencies. As it concluded, Dr. Capper approached Reyes privately. "Elena," he said quietly, using her first name away from the others, "there's something you should know. I've completed my analysis of the Axoni communication protocols. There's a pattern in their transmissions that suggests." "Suggests what, Sanjay?" "That they're not unified. There are subtle variations, what we might call dialects or factions. If we could exploit that. Raya's eyes widened. Could we create false commands? So confusion. Possibly, but it would require precise timing. I'd need to be on the command ship with you. Done, she said without hesitation. Report to the Defiant at 600. And Sanjay, good work. 71 hours later, the Axoni fleet entered Earth orbit exactly as predicted. Their formation was perfect, a geometric pattern that maximized their sensor coverage and weapons overlap. They're scanning the planet, reported Lieutenant Park from her communications station aboard the Defiant, hidden in a crater on the far side of the moon. Any attempts to communicate? Rise asked. No, Commodore. They're broadcasting something, but it's not directed at us. More like, they're cataloging. Dr. Capper looked up from his station. They're documenting their containment operation. Methodical. Clinical. The main viewer showed the Axoni ships deploying smaller vessels, hundreds of them, descending toward Earth in precise patterns. Those are troop carriers, General Santos said over the secure channel from her position at Lunar Command. They're beginning a ground invasion. Rice checked the tactical display. The Axoni have positioned exactly as predicted, focusing their attention on the token resistance offered by Earth's visible defenses. They've taken the bait, she said. All ships, prepare to execute butterfly protocol on my mark. Dr. Kepper, status of the EM network. Armed and ready, Commodore. Rice took a deep breath. Remember your training. Unpredictability is our weapon. Timing is everything. She watched as the last Axoni ship moved into position. Mark. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden fleet suddenly powered up. Ships emerged from behind moons, asteroids, and from within the atmospheres of gas giants, places the Axoni's logical scanning patterns had overlooked. They accelerated toward the alien fleet in chaotic, seemingly random patterns. Simultaneously, the E-impulse network activated, sending waves of targeted electromagnetic interference washing over the Axoni vessels. On the bridge of the Defiant, Rise watched the tactical display intently. Status. E-impulses effective, Volkov reported. Axoni ships showing power fluctuations and targeting disruptions. Butterfly squadrons engaged, Park added. No losses yet. Hummingbird drones launching now. Dr. Capper worked frantically at his station. I've isolated their command frequencies. Initiating Operation Discord. Now. Across the Axoni fleet, confusion spread as ships began receiving contradictory commands, each appearing to come from legitimate authority sources. It's working, Volkov said, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. 3 Axoni ships are breaking formation. 2 more have powered down weapons. Rise leaned forward. Target the lead vessel with concentrated hummingbird strikes. All butterfly squadrons. Focus fire on designated shield nodes. On the view screen, tiny hummingbird drones swarmed the largest Axoni ship, each delivering a precisely calculated energy pulse to specific points in the alien vessel's shield geometry. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a crystal cracking along invisible fault lines, the shields collapsed. Direct hits confirmed on lead vessel, tactical reported. Their shields are down. All ships, converge on that target, Rise ordered. Maximum firepower. Human vessels broke from their chaotic patterns just long enough to deliver a devastating combined attack on the exposed Axoni flagship. The alien vessel shuddered under the assault, secondary explosions blossoming along its crystalline surface. They're adapting, Dr. Capper warned. Effectiveness dropping. They're changing their shield configurations. Reyes had expected nothing less. Execute Phase 2. All ships, switch to Dragonfly patterns. Deploy countermeasures. The human fleet broke into smaller groups, each adopting new attack patterns while launching clouds of sensor-jamming particles, another technology developed by studying the Axoni's own systems. On the main Axoni command ship, Supreme Director Tarek struggled to comprehend the situation. The humans were not behaving according to any logical combat protocol. Their ships moved in patterns that defied strategic analysis. Their communications were scrambled or nonsensical, and somehow they had managed to briefly neutralize Axoni shield technology. Adaptation required. Terex announced to his command staff. Recalibrate defensive systems. Deploy analytical subroutines to identify patterns in human attack methodology. There are no patterns, Director, his second responded. Their movements appear random. Impossible. No species wages war randomly. Continue analysis. Meanwhile, Reyes and her forces pressed their advantage. 2 more Axoni vessels had sustained significant damage, and a third had withdrawn from the battle entirely. They're pulling back, Volkov observed. Regrouping. As expected, Reyes nodded. They need time to analyze and adapt. Dr. Kapper, what's their status? Their communications suggest confusion. They're trying to identify patterns in our attacks, patterns that don't exist. He looked up with a hint of a smile. The butterfly protocol is working exactly as intended. Good. Now we move to Phase 3. Reyes opened a channel to all ships. All units, execute Operation Phantom. I repeat, execute Operation Phantom. Across the battlefield, human ships suddenly cut power, drifting on momentum alone. To Axoni sensors, they appeared to have suffered catastrophic systems failures. Now we see if our research was correct, Reyes said quietly. The Axoni fleet, having regrouped, began methodically approaching the apparently disabled human vessels, exactly as Reyes had predicted they would. They're deploying boarding craft, Park reported. Minimal weapons charge. Hold. Reyes commanded, watching the tactical display carefully. Hold. When the Axoni boarding vessels were committed, too far from their motherships to retreat quickly, Reyes gave the final order. Now, all ships, execute Firefly protocol. The disabled human ships suddenly powered up, but instead of attacking, they released thousands of small objects that had been concealed in their hulls. The Fireflies, microdrones carrying specialized electronic warfare packages. The Fireflies swarmed the Axoni boarding craft and then the larger warships, attaching to their hulls and injecting tailored computer viruses directly into their systems. Viruses developed based on Dr. Kepper's analysis of Axoni communication protocols. On the Axoni command ship, chaos erupted as systems began shutting down or operating unpredictably. Impossible. Terex exclaimed as his control interfaces flickered and distorted. How could primitives penetrate our cybersecurity? The answer, had he known it, was simple. Humans had designed their attack not based on technological superiority, but on the Axoni's own psychological weakness, their inability to comprehend truly unpredictable behavior. All ships, conventional attack formation, Reyes ordered. Target their weapons and propulsion systems. The human fleet converged on the disoriented Axoni vessels, now firing in coordinated, precise patterns, exactly what the aliens would have expected initially, but were now unprepared for. 3 hours later, the battle was over. 7 Axoni ships had been destroyed, 3 had surrendered, and 2 had fled the system. Humanity had suffered losses, nearly 30% of their fleet, but Earth was safe. In the aftermath, Reyes stood again at the observation window, looking down at the planet they had saved. The Council is calling it the greatest victory in human history, Volkov said, joining her. It's not a victory yet, Reyes replied. This was just their containment fleet. Once word reaches the Axoni Empire, you think they'll send more ships? I know they will. But next time, they'll be prepared for our tactics. Volkov considered this. Then we'll need new tactics. More than that, Reyes said. We need to take the fight to them. Dr. Kapper has translated enough of their data to give us coordinates for Axoni territory. An offensive. Volkov sounded surprised. With what? We barely survived this encounter. Reyes turned to him, a determined smile forming. With the most powerful weapon humanity possesses, Commander, our unpredictability. And perhaps, she glanced at the datapad in her hand, showing information recovered from the captured Axoni vessels, perhaps with some new allies. It seems the Axoni Empire contains many subjugated species who might welcome liberation. You're suggesting we start an interstellar rebellion. I'm suggesting we do what humans have always done. Adapt, overcome, and forge connections where others see only conflict. She handed him the datapad. Have Dr. Kepper focus on translating these communications from something called the Resistance. It seems we're not the first to fight back against the Axoni, just the first to succeed. The turning point. The captured Axoni cruiser Audacity, renamed by its human crew, slipped silently through the nebula, its crystalline hull modified to absorb rather than reflect the surrounding energies. On the bridge, Commodore Rice studied the tactical display showing their destination. Nexus Station, a massive space habitat serving as a hub for various species under Axoni control. Status report, she requested. Axoni patrols maintaining standard routes. Lieutenant Park replied from the communication station. No indication they've detected us. Dr. Kepper. The scientist looked up from his console, where he'd been analyzing Axoni data transmissions. Fascinating. There are at least 5 distinct species using the station, each with their own segregated section. The Axoni don't encourage interaction between their subject races. Divide and conquer, Rise nodded. Classic strategy. What about our potential allies? The Viridians. Still maintaining communication. They're cautious. They've lived under Axoni rule for 3 generations. The concept of successful resistance is foreign to them. Raids understood their hesitation. In the 6 months since the Battle of Earth, humanity had been implementing an audacious plan, making contact with subjugated species throughout Axoni territory, sharing technology, and sowing the seeds of rebellion. The Viridians, insectoid beings with remarkable technical skills, were potentially the most valuable allies yet. Maintain position behind the nebula's edge, she ordered. Prepare the shuttle for our meeting. Commander Volkov, you have the bridge. Commodore, Volkov said quietly. Are you certain about this? Meeting them personally carries significant risk. Diplomacy requires personal connection, Mikhail. These people have been oppressed for generations. They need to see that we're real, that resistance is possible. She gestured to Dr. Kepper. Sanjay, you're with me. We launch in 20 minutes. The shuttle journey to the hidden meeting point within the nebula was tense but uneventful. They docked at an abandoned mining facility, a perfect location, overlooked by Axoni patrols, due to its officially depleted status. Inside, 3 Viridians waited. They stood on 4 lower limbs while their upper limbs, 4 on each side, remained in constant, delicate motion. Their compound eyes reflected the dim lighting as they studied the humans cautiously. I am Senior Engineer Zix. The central figure introduced itself, mandibles clicking softly as the translation device interpreted. These are my associates, Technician Villa, and Security Coordinator Nix. Reyes stepped forward. Commodore Elena Reyes of Earth. This is Dr. Sanjay Kepper, our chief scientist. We have reviewed the data you transmitted, Zix said, body language unreadable to human eyes. Your victory against an Axoni containment fleet is unprecedented. Yet you remain skeptical, Reyes noted. The Axoni have ruled this sector for 900 of your years. Nix interjected, her tone harsh even through the translator. Many species have attempted resistance. All have failed. With respect, Dr. Kepper said, those species didn't have the advantage of surprise or human unpredictability. Nor did they have this. He activated a holographic display showing technical schematics. The Viridians' compound eyes widened, their upper limbs suddenly still. This is, Zix began. A fundamental flaw in Axoni shield harmonics, Kepper confirmed. Combined with our electronic warfare capabilities, it allowed us to defeat warships far more powerful than our own. We're sharing this and other technologies with all who will join our alliance, Rise added. The Tellurians have already begun manufacturing the shield disruptors. The Morrigan are adapting our electronic warfare packages to their own systems. Why? Vela spoke for the first time, her voice softer but intense. Why would humans risk further Axoni wrath by helping others? Your world is safe for now. Is it? Rise countered. The Axoni designated humanity as a threat to be contained. They'll return with a larger force, better prepared for our tactics. Our only hope, everyone's only hope, is to create a unified resistance that the Axoni cannot predict or counter. She stepped closer to the Viridians. But there's more than strategic necessity. On Earth, we have a saying, no one is free until all are free. The Axoni Empire is built on subjugation and control. We believe all sentient beings deserve self-determination. The Viridians conferred among themselves in their native language, limbs moving in patterns that seemed to form part of their communication. Finally, Zix turned back to the humans. Your shield harmonics technology is impressive, but the Axoni will adapt quickly. Their technological superiority remains overwhelming, which is why we need the Viridians, Capper said earnestly. Your species' reputation for innovation is known even to us newcomers. We don't just want you to use our technology. We want to collaborate, combine human creativity with Viridian precision. To create something entirely new, Rise finished. Something the Axoni cannot predict because it has never existed before. Zix's compound eyes seemed to study them with new intensity. There is a project, one we have hidden from our Axoni overseers for generations. It may be relevant to your proposal. We're listening, Rise encouraged. We call it the Nexus Key. In theory, it could temporarily disrupt the quantum entanglement network that links all Axoni technology. Their ships, weapons, even their automated systems rely on instantaneous communication through this network. Dr. Capper leaned forward, excitement evident. You're describing a system-wide disruption, more comprehensive than anything we've achieved. Yes, but it remains theoretical. We lack certain components, and testing would alert the Axoni immediately. Rise and Capper exchanged glances. What if you had a safe testing ground? Rise asked. And access to materials beyond Axoni monitoring. Then perhaps, Zix's mandibles clicked rapidly. Perhaps the impossible becomes possible. 3 weeks later, aboard the Audacity, Rise addressed the assembled representatives of 7 different species, the core of what was now being called the Liberation Alliance. The Viridian Nexus Key represents our best chance to cripple Axoni command and control, she explained, gesturing to the schematic displayed holographically. Combined with our shield disruption technology and coordinated strikes from all Alliance members, we can potentially liberate dozens of systems in a single operation. The Axoni will retaliate severely, warned the Morrigan representative, a feathered humanoid whose species had suffered brutal punishment for previous resistance attempts, which is why timing is critical, Dr. Capper responded. The key will disrupt their network for approximately 12 minutes. During that window, we must strike simultaneously across all targeted systems, focusing on their central command nodes. The Tellurian representative, a silicon-based being who communicated through light patterns, flashed a sequence that translated as, "The plan requires perfect coordination across vast distances. How can this be achieved without alerting the Axoni to our preparations?" Commander Volkov stepped forward. We've developed a communication method using quantum-entangled particles, similar to Axoni technology, but with a human twist. He smiled slightly. It's deliberately imperfect, creating patterns that appear as natural background radiation to Axoni sensors. The discussion continued for hours, each species contributing expertise and raising concerns. What emerged was not just a battle plan, but a new form of interspecies cooperation, one that leveraged the unique strengths of each member. 2 months later, the plan was ready. The Liberation Fleet, a motley collection of vessels from all 7 Alliance species, gathered in the shadow of a rogue planet deep in unclaimed space. In the Audacity's conference room, Reyes reviewed the final details with her command staff and the Viridian engineers. "The Nexus key is complete," Zix reported, mandibles clicking with what Reyes had learned was excitement. Tests confirmed 94% effectiveness against isolated Axoni systems. "The Alliance fleets are in position near all primary targets," Volkov added, "awaiting only our signal." Reyes nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "And the Axoni?" "They've increased patrols following the liberation of the Tellurian homeworld," Dr. Kapper said, "but they remain unaware of the full scope of our alliance. Their arrogance is our advantage. They cannot conceive of lesser species coordinating so effectively. Their central command world, Axiom Prime, remains heavily defended," Volkov cautioned. "Even with the Nexus key, attacking directly would be suicide. Which is why we won't attack conventionally," Reyes said. "The primary strike team will infiltrate using captured Axoni shuttles. I'll lead it personally." Protests erupted immediately, particularly from Volkov and Kapper. "Commodore, the risk," Volkov began, "is necessary," Reyes cut him off. "This mission requires adapting to unpredictable situations, humanity's specialty. The Viridian team needs our protection to deploy the key at the central node." "Then I'm going with you," Dr. Kapper said firmly. After further discussion, the plan was set. 12 hours later, 3 Axoni shuttles, captured in previous operations and modified to conceal their human and Viridian occupants, approached Axiom Prime on apparently routine trajectories. Inside the lead shuttle, Reyes, Kapper, and a team of specialists sat alongside Zix and 3 other Viridian engineers. Their shuttle had been programmed with legitimate Axoni clearance codes, courtesy of the Alliance's growing intelligence network. "Approaching primary defense perimeter," reported Lieutenant Chen, piloting the shuttle. "Transmitting clearance codes. Now." Tense moments passed. Then, codes accepted. "We're cleared to proceed to maintenance docking bay 12 Alpha." The plan was working. Their intelligence had identified a critical weakness in the Axoni command structure, their absolute reliance on automated systems and protocols. Once valid clearance was established, the system's own rigidity prevented further questioning. The shuttle docked smoothly, wearing captured Axoni environmental suits modified to conceal their true forms. The infiltration team moved through the massive installation. The Viridians' knowledge of Axoni architecture proved invaluable as they navigated toward the central communications hub. "Security patrol," whispered Chen through their secure comms. "Next intersection." Reyes signaled the team to halt, then made a decision. "Alternative route," she whispered, pointing to a maintenance shaft that wasn't on their planned path. Zix's compound eyes blinked rapidly, the Viridian equivalent of surprise. "That leads to the auxiliary power systems. It's not our target." "Exactly why we should use it," Reyes replied. "The unexpected route." The deviation paid off. They avoided the patrol and discovered an unmonitored access point to the communications hub, a service passage that the rigid Axoni security protocols had overlooked. Inside the massive hub, crystalline structures pulsed with light, the physical manifestation of the quantum network that connected all Axoni technology throughout their empire. "Incredible," breathed Dr. Kapper. "The entire network, their whole empire controlled from this single point." Zix and the Viridian engineers immediately went to work, their multiple limbs moving with precision as they began attaching the Nexus key components to specific nodes in the crystalline structure. "Perimeter security established," Chen reported, as the human soldiers took defensive positions. "No alerts yet." "It's working," Chen reported. "They're withdrawing to regroup." "Not for long," Reyes cautioned. "Once their command structure analyzes the contradictory orders, they'll return in force." 2 minutes to completion, Zix reported. The facility shuddered as something massive impacted nearby. "Orbital bombardment," Volkov reported grimly. "They're sacrificing parts of their own facility to stop us." "Zix, can you accelerate the process?" Rise asked. The Viridian's compound eyes blinked rapidly. Possibly, but with increased risk of system instability. Do it, Rise ordered. Better an imperfect activation than none at all. As the Viridians worked, Rise opened the fleet-wide channel. All Alliance vessels, this is Commodore Rais. Prepare for possible premature activation of the Nexus Key. Be ready to execute liberation protocols on my mark, regardless of the original timetable. Acknowledgements came in from across the Alliance fleet. The Tellurians, the Morrigan, the Cetians, and all others, ready to strike simultaneously across dozens of Axoni-controlled systems. Another impact rocked the facility, closer this time. Debris fell from the ceiling, narrowly missing the Viridian team. Zix, Rais called. Almost. There. The Viridian's limbs moved in a blur of activity. Nexus Key installed, beginning activation sequence. The crystalline structure at the heart of the facility began to pulse with new energy, not the orderly, rhythmic patterns of Axoni technology, but chaotic, unpredictable waves that spread through the network. Activation in 5, 4. The doors to the hub burst open as a new wave of Axoni defenders entered, these led by a taller being with elaborate crystalline formations, a high-ranking commander. Cease this disruption immediately, it commanded, its voice carrying harmonics that attempted to override the infiltration team's neural functions, another Axoni control mechanism. How long? Rise asked the Viridians. 7 minutes to complete installation. Zix replied, mandibles working rapidly. Another 3 to calibrate and activate. Rais nodded. Keep working. Wheel. An alarm suddenly blared through the facility, red light pulsing through the crystalline walls. We've been detected. Volkov's voice came through their comms from the Audacity, monitoring from a safe distance. Automated security protocols activating throughout the facility. Can you override? Rais demanded. Negative. They've isolated the command hub systems. Rais made a split-second decision. Zix, continue the installation. Everyone else, prepare for defense. Dr. Copper, I need you to access that terminal. See if you can slow down their response. As security doors began closing throughout the facility, the human soldiers set up defensive positions using portable shield generators, technology that combined human ingenuity with Viridian precision engineering. Dr. Capper worked frantically at an Axoni terminal, his fingers flying over the alien interface. I can't stop them, but I can confuse them, he reported, sending contradictory commands to their security systems. The first wave of Axoni defenders arrived. Tall, crystalline beings moving with mechanical precision, energy weapons charge. They fired in perfect unison, their shots striking the human shields with devastating force. Shields at 60% and dropping. Chen warned. Rais activated her own weapon, a modified Axoni disruptor that fired chaotic, unpredictable energy patterns. Return fire. Random patterns, just like we practiced. The human defenders fired, not in coordinated salvos as the Axoni expected, but in seemingly random, unpredictable bursts. Several Axoni fell, their crystalline bodies shattering. 4 minutes to installation completion. Zix reported, the Viridians continuing their work despite the battle raging around them. On the main tactical channel, Volkov's voice came through. Commodore, Axoni reinforcements approaching the facility. Heavy warships detected powering up in orbit. Time to activation. Rais asked Zix. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Too long. They needed a distraction. Dr. Copper, can you access their internal communication systems from that terminal? The scientist nodded, understanding immediately. Attempting now. Yes, I have limited access. Send emergency evacuation orders to all sections except this one. Priority override, highest authority signature. As Capper implemented her command, alarms changed tone throughout the facility. The Axoni forces hesitated, their rigid programming conflicted by seemingly legitimate evacuation orders. 3, 2, now. Rais shouted. The human soldiers fired simultaneously at the commander, their chaotic energy blasts shattering its protective field. 1. Activated. The Nexus key flared to life, sending a cascade of disruptive energy through the quantum entanglement network. The crystalline structures throughout the facility flickered, their light patterns becoming erratic. The Axoni defenders froze, suddenly cut off from their command protocols. "It's working," Dr. Capper exclaimed. "The entire network is experiencing cascade failure." Reyes immediately activated the fleet-wide channel again. "All Alliance vessels, execute liberation protocols now. The Nexus key is active." Across Axoni space, the Alliance fleet sprang into action. Ships that had been hiding near strategic targets suddenly powered up, targeting Axoni vessels now operating without their networked advantages. On occupied worlds, resistance fighters emerged from hiding, seizing control of key facilities while their oppressors struggled with failing technology. In the command hub, Reyes turned to Zix. "How long will it last?" "Uncertain," the Viridian admitted. "The premature activation may have compromised stability, perhaps 8 minutes instead of 12. "Then we don't waste a second," Reyes responded. "Dr. Capper, download everything you can from their systems while they're vulnerable. Chen, signal the extraction team. We need immediate evacuation." As they worked to complete their mission, a strange sound filled the hub, a harmonic resonance that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The Axoni commander, though damaged, managed to speak. "You do not understand what you have done." Reyes kept her weapon trained on the alien. "We've liberated countless beings from your control." "No," the Axoni said, its voice fluctuating with the facility's failing systems. "You have awakened that which came before." Before Reyes could question further, Dr. Capper called out, "Commodore, I'm finding references in their data to something called the progenitors. It appears the Axoni themselves were once controlled." The implications were staggering, but there was no time to process them. "Download everything. We'll analyze it later." Extraction team status. 2 minutes out, Chen reported. The facility shuddered again, more violently this time. "The orbital bombardment has stopped," Volkov reported over comms. "Axoni ships are withdrawing." "Commodore, something's happening." New energy signatures detected throughout the system. The Axoni commander's crystalline form began to resonate with the same frequency as the walls. The network was not just for control, it was containment. Its voice faded as its form destabilized. "Extraction team has docked," Chen reported. "We need to move now." As they retreated from the hub, Reyes took one last look at the pulsing crystalline heart of the Axoni network, now broadcasting patterns she hadn't seen before, patterns that seemed to be calling to something in the depths of space. The extraction was chaotic but successful. As their shuttle raced away from Action Prime, they'd witnessed something extraordinary. The Axoni fleet, normally so perfectly ordered, was in disarray. Some vessels fled, while others seemed to be forming new defensive positions around the planet. Aboard the Audacity, the command staff gathered to assess the operation's outcome. "The Nexus key worked beyond expectations," Volkov reported. "We're receiving confirmation from across Axoni space. 32 systems liberated, their defense forces disabled or in retreat. The Alliance performed admirably," added Lieutenant Park. "Minimal casualties, maximum impact." Dr. Capper, however, looked troubled as he reviewed the data stolen from the Axoni network. "Commodore, I think we need to discuss what we found." "About the progenitors." Reyes nodded, feeling both the triumph of their victory and the weight of new uncertainty. "Brief me. What exactly did we stumble into?" According to these records, the Axoni weren't always conquerors. They were custodians. Capper displayed ancient records recovered from the deepest layers of the Axoni database. Approximately 10,000 years ago, they encountered something they called the progenitors, a non-corporeal species that exists within subspace. A first contact gone wrong, Rise murmured, recognizing the parallel to humanity's own experience. Catastrophically wrong, Copper continued. The progenitors attempted to absorb the Axoni consciousness into their collective. The Axoni barely survived by developing the quantum entanglement network. It somehow shielded their minds while allowing them to utilize the progenitors' technology. And they've been using that network to keep these progenitors contained. Volkov asked. Exactly. Their rigid, logical thinking patterns weren't just cultural. They were protective. Predictability and order created patterns the progenitors couldn't penetrate. A chill ran through the command room as the implications became clear. And we just disrupted that network, Rise said quietly, with chaos and unpredictability. The very things that might create openings for these progenitors. Zix, who had joined them for the debriefing, clicked his mandibles anxiously. If this is true, we may have inadvertently initiated something far worse than Axoni domination. Rise was silent for a long moment, processing this new information. Finally, she stood, her decision made. Contact all Alliance vessels. I want representatives from every species at a summit in neutral space within 48 hours. She turned to Dr. Copper. Continue analyzing that data. I want to know everything about these progenitors and how the Axoni contained them. And the Axoni themselves? Volkov asked. Contact them, Rais said firmly. Not as conquerors, but as potential allies. If we accidentally release something worse than them, we'll need their knowledge to face it. As the orders were carried out, Rais moved to the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Humanity had come to space seeking knowledge and connection, only to find war. They had fought that war with their unique gift, unpredictability, and won a victory for freedom across dozens of worlds. But now they faced something entirely new. The possibility that order and chaos must find balance, that neither rigid control nor complete unpredictability was the answer to the challenges of a universe far stranger than anyone had imagined. Commodore, Dr. Capper said, joining her at the viewport. There's something else in the data, something about human DNA specifically. What about it? The Axoni weren't just afraid of our unpredictability. They were afraid of our potential. He showed her a genetic analysis the Axoni had performed on captured human samples. According to their science, humans have unusual neurological plasticity and resistance to certain forms of mental influence. Resistance to the very thing that threatened the Axoni, Rides realized. That's why they were so determined to contain us. Yes, and why we might be crucial in what comes next. Rise nodded slowly, a new determination forming. Humanity had survived first contact gone wrong. They had led an alliance to victory against technological superiors. Now they would face this new challenge, not alone, but as part of something greater. A true alliance of diverse species, each contributing their unique strengths. Send a message to Earth, she instructed. Tell them we've won the battle, but a new chapter is beginning, and humanity will lead the way not through dominance, but through connection. As the Audacity turned toward the rendezvous point for the Alliance Summit, new sensor readings began coming in from the fringes of known space, unusual energy patterns that matched nothing in any species database, spreading like ripples across subspace. The progenitors were stirring. The greatest test of humanity and their allies was just beginning. But this time, they would face it together.